Hello, I'm Karina Barn, Executive Director with Symphony Tacoma. Thank you so much for joining us for our return to our Facebook Live series. While we can't gather together quite yet, we're so excited to offer you 3 different virtual series for the fall. Our encore presentations feature rebroadcasts of favorite performances from our archives. Our interludes presentations are new chamber music performances. And tonight, of course, is our Facebook Live series, which offers opportunities for you to learn more about our guest artists, musicians, and community members. Tonight's Facebook Live is brought to you by our sponsors, Multicare, Tacoma Creates, and Churchill Management Group. We are so grateful for their support, which helps us present these broadcasts at no charge for viewers. If you're interested in helping to support our programs, please visit symphonytacoma.org/support for more information on making a donation. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the program.
Welcome back, everyone, and what an unusual start to our 2021 season this is. We've all been away for the summer doing various activities, trying to stay healthy and keeping safe, and we were hoping very much to be with you very shortly. But since our fall is digital, we have some really, really exciting programs for you. First of all, if you get a moment, please share this post so that other people listening can enjoy this and tune in to this really exciting and important episode of Facebook Live. This is actually our 11th episode, so we hope that we're not going to have any technical glitches tonight. But again, just thanks for sharing this and thanks for joining us. Tonight, we're absolutely live. We've got Anthony McGill in the wings on the East Coast, and we've got Richard Danielpour, the composer of the clarinet concerto that you were just listening to. He's with us, and as you may know, we programmed Anthony McGill to perform From the Mountaintop with our orchestra later this spring. And so we're going to have a wonderful conversation about that, because it's right on the mark, as relevant as ever to Black Lives Matter. So I'm going to be sharing more excerpts of music, but if you were listening right before the program, you heard Anthony McGill performing From the Mountaintop with Gateways Music Festival, a very important music festival that is being sharing some of the richest African-American music from the last 100 years. Anthony McGill is one of classical music's most recognizable and brilliantly multifaceted figures. He's a dear friend of mine. We've known each other since Cincinnati Symphony days. And I'm just really excited that we have him, as well as Richard Danielpour, one of the most recorded composers of his generation. He's had commissions from very prestigious artists such as New York Philharmonic Orchestra, Philadelphia Orchestra, Jesse Norman, Yo-Yo Ma. Just such a legend, these two figures. So you can enjoy hearing from them. And we're really proud that we have Desiree Wilkins Finch to join us. She's the leader of a coaching company, Rise Lead with Purpose, Rise LWP. You can find that online. And there's many connections between these 3 artists. Desiree is a board member of Symphony Tacoma, and she's proud to advocate for us in the community on the Community Connections Committee. Now, this is something that interests you to join us in our plight to strengthen our relationship with the community. Please contact Symphony Tacoma, because we need more people to advocate for the arts. We need more people to make connections and diversify ourselves. And this is just such an important thing for us right now, especially after everything that has happened in the summer. So without further ado, please welcome our guests. First of all, Desiree and Anthony McGill in a conversation about Black Lives Matter in the symphonic world. Hello, Desiree and Anthony. Thank you for joining us both.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Anthony, it's such a pleasure to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Tell us about your connection, first of all, so everybody can see how far you guys go back.
Anthony doesn't remember, so I'll gladly throw him under the bus and tell him how I know him. Well, actually, it predates us, Anthony. Your father and my mother went to Farragut together, I think on the west side of Chicago.
It's on the west side. Yeah, I just told them to tune in, so they are watching. So
hey, y'all. My mom is watching as well. So, and then I first met Damari because I played flute, and my flute teacher at the time was Miss Ross, and she was a jazz instructor. And she said to me, Desiree, I've taught you all that I could teach you. Let me show you another world, access. And so she took me to, at the time it was Orchestra Hall, and I saw Damari play. And I laid there like this through the whole symphony. And then I saw this Black man with this beautiful flute walk onto the stage, and my eyes opened up, and he had my attention from the time he walked onto that stage to the time he left. And I said to her, I want to do that. And then I followed on his footsteps. I studied with Susan Leventon. I was a part of CYSO, CYCO, Merit. I went to Lawrence University Conservatory of Music, and then my career ended.
I always tell people that I'm a band geek who never grew up, so I just happen to keep playing. So.
Anthony, it's so great to see you again. It's been way too long, and as we spoke on the phone the other day, you have just gone from success to success. You know, the first African-American principal of the New York Philharmonic, principal clarinet of the Metropolitan Opera. When we worked together, you were Cincinnati Symphony, and also a very young rising star. You've been such an inspiration to so many people. Tell us what you're doing right now, and you know, it's just wonderful hearing backstage what you're up to even today, and how this mission, I call it a mission because I sort of feel you're on a mission. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess, you know, honestly, I think we all are on some sort of mission in life, right? And we have different paths that get us there, and the clarinet has taken me through my life in a way that I think that through the clarinet, I've been able to find kind of a higher calling, if you will. And it's really amazing, and kind of, I just found out today that Desiree was going to be on the call, but it actually connects amazingly with everything that I care about dearly, is those experiences that, you know, we had, Desiree and I, and all the lucky students that went through the program that we went through called the Merit School of Music. And today I was just talking to everybody earlier about the work I'm doing with kids in New York, just trying to give kids in my community the same access and opportunity that I had growing up in Chicago. And so through the Music Advancement Program, we're trying to serve underserved communities. We're trying to serve diverse student base of 70 kids we have. It's a small program where they're getting intermediate to advanced level training for classical music. But it's more than that. It's a lot more than that. As we were talking about at 8 a.m. this morning on the East Coast, we were talking about community, talking about giving back to one's community, changing the world. We're talking about how to be a better citizen, how to be a better artist, but really how to be a better person that cares about social justice, that cares about helping people, helping the world become a better place. And that's what our kids are trying to do with the world. And all of the programs that I'm affiliated with in New York are trying to do every day. And so that has become a mission of mine, but it is very easy how I got into this, because this is what gave me the opportunity to be able to do what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So in a way, I'm giving back, but really, I'm not doing that. I'm giving back to I'm fulfilling my own dreams
Mhm.
of being able to be inspired by kids that I was. I basically I told Desiree and everybody before this call that I was talking to myself today. So I spend a lot of time, trying to help me. Like they say, what would you do? What would you tell a kid if you were to tell yourself, all those years later? That's what I try to do every
Yeah.
day.
And you
That's
know
what
what, Anthony, I love that so much because I can remember moments, you know, after I left married and started trying to figure out how to make this a career, right? And I remember auditioning for Michelle Francis Dubois at Oberlin, right? And the challenge it was hearing his feedback, right? And I can remember being at Lawrence University auditioning, and Ernestine Whitman said to my mother, "Do you know that this is a whitey town?" And I have many stories like that where I felt as though there was no space for me as an African American woman from the South Side of Chicago. I'm from Roseland, right? And so there weren't a lot of people in my tenure where they looked like us. They had our same tone of voice, our same hair texture, our same lived experiences. And so I have to be honest and say, and this is, I'm not putting this on anyone's shoulders but my own, I felt abandoned in this classical music world. And there was no, I remember Terrence was the conductor of the CYCO. I can't remember the other African American gentleman at the time, but outside of them, there really was no representation from my experience in the classical music world. And so I just want to commend and thank you for being to these children that look like us what I didn't have, right? And what I felt I needed. And so I need you to know how amazing that is and how many lives, I'm sure you know this, that you're going to change just because of your sheer presence. Thank you for that.
Thank you. She's trying to choke me up, but honestly, that's actually a very beautiful thing. And what's also just a small world thing is that recording that we're going to come back to about From the Mountaintop, Danielpour, and talk about, that was conducted by Michael Morgan, who was my first youth orchestra conductor in Chicago. And so to be able to play that piece with him and the Gateways Orchestra, an orchestra made up of people that also have similar skin tone to
Yes,
me,
it was beautiful. I
was
saw that recording.
really, really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And the more people that can see that not being something that is unusual or something that is out of the ordinary, the more people won't feel abandoned by music and a field that they love.
Yeah.
That changed their lives when they were younger.
Yes.
That they can be included in that same community when they become professionals or not.
Did you ever have that feeling, Anthony, throughout your career where you just felt like, you know what, I see what's happening here, but I'm just gonna persevere? Like, did you ever have those
Yeah,
experiences?
always.
How do you center Blackness in the
I
midst of that?
I think the important thing that you just mentioned is perseverance. And perseverance for me in music was that the reason I was able to do so is because I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, come on.
That for me, music was, and actually I learned this from somebody that came to Merit and spoke to us as kids once. And he said, if you can imagine yourself doing anything else in the world,
Yeah.
don't go into music.
You're gonna make me cry now.
He said, if you can imagine yourself doing anything else in the world, but he was saying that in a positive way. He was basically looking at all of us kids and saying, you all will be successful at whatever you do. And this is what I tell my own students. You'll be successful at whatever you do. It doesn't have to be music. But sometimes the only reason I'm still in music is because music chose me to the point where I had to persevere And I had just as many doubts as many other kids growing up from where I grew up. And I was challenged many times along the way, challenged to prove my identity, to prove myself to people for whatever reason.
Yeah.
A lot because of the color of my skin and how Black I was, but also from people that in my community also that told me that I should not be doing this either.
Come on.
Because of how white the profession
Yes.
was.
How did you handle that tension?
Well, that's very interesting. That's what I mean. I had to persevere through that,
Yeah.
and I still do that today.
Yes.
I still have conversations today, just the other day. I have to prove myself, supposedly, to everyone. But you know what? I persevere. My parents who are on this call taught me that you do what you want to do, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that I've always kept with me. And so it's not that it wasn't hard and I don't struggle to do that. And I didn't have those struggles that a lot of people of color face and a lot of different people from different communities face all the time, that doubt. And I have had to go back to my personal love of music over everything else.
Now, given your love of music, and you are an amazing performer, I'm not a stan, but I definitely follow you guys. But given your love of music and the platform that you have, which is a privilege, right? How do you think about centering Blackness as a performer, but then also as the almost like a demand for hearing from Black composers, or how do you manage that? Or is that something you're thinking about, or holding?
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that I've been a professional performer for 20 years, and in the field of, for instance, orchestral playing, for instance, I have not felt that I have been able to do a good enough job of doing that. Honestly, because of the way the programming is, because of the way the structures are. And so in a way, over the last many years of my life, I've had to like reach out to my part in the education world to like center Blackness, so to speak, to center the importance of all of that.
So what I hear you saying is that it's difficult to be done in the orchestra world. So you've had to find other ways to center Blackness in this world.
Yes, I've had to find my connection with my community. I've had to find many different ways because basically I wasn't in charge of my own programming, so to speak. I wasn't in charge of my own artistic life.
But now you do more of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I have seen you do some incredible performances and promote James Lee III, and some really important composers. And I'm just reflecting a little bit on the conversation and wanting to lead into a piece of music that is by Florence Price. And I know that you like Florence Price's music because I know that you're interested in maybe performing it with us someday, some official arrangements or something. But I thought this would be a moment to share, some of the struggles that some of the women, African-American composers have had over the last 100 years or so. We have programmed, along with From the Mountaintop, Florence Price's Ethiopia's Shadow in America. And this was performed in the 1930s. And this is a composer whose archives have just been buried. Many of the Black African-American women composers didn't get recorded, didn't get published. But now there is a resurgence of interest. And certainly I am one of many, many conductors interested to really help the balance. It was extraordinary to learn that in 2014, the League of American Orchestras said that only 4% of music performed by orchestras is of African American descent. Now that's just got to change so drastically, and I feel a commitment, as does Symphony Tacoma, and I know you're performing as well, is trying to perform as many important African American composers and just dig them out of the archives. And with Sherma now publishing some really important African American music, do you think we can see change in the future?
You're asking me?
Yeah, do you think this is going to help us?
Yes, I do. I think that there's been, I mean, I have hope. You know, I'm a positive person. So I think there has been, and for example, and I actually haven't told anybody about this, but you know, our clarinet studio at Juilliard, for instance, you know, storied, famous Juilliard school, has updated our admissions requirements to include works from Black composers, female composers, Asian composers, LGBT composers, and a whole list of maybe like 30 different composers.
Wow.
The students are required to choose from one of those, in addition to the Mozart clarinet concerto and the classics and the post 1960 composers. They're required to choose from this large list. Every single person on our faculty chose and went to their own archives and their knowledge and to create a diverse list. And you know what? It happened in 2 days. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. It's difficult to actually like just shift your mind to say, what do we know? We know more than we think we know. And if the stuff that we don't know, we can figure it out. So next year, maybe the list will be more refined. Maybe we hear pieces, we'll like add to it. But the fact that we have shifted our minds to be able to like adjust and say, this is actually important.
Yeah.
This is important.
Yeah.
And then to make that action is something that it seems like it's radical. It seems like it's a hard thing to do for some people. But then you realize, wait a second, no, it's not. It's actually very normal and natural and also easy to do.
Let's listen to a little snippet of Florence Price. Let's take a moment break, and we have Richard Danielpour in the wings. So after this, I'm going to come off camera and let you guys talk with Richard Danielpour about From the Mountaintop, because he is right on the mark, back from 2013 when he wrote this incredible piece for you, Anthony. So here's Ethiopia's Shadow in America. Note the beautiful clarinet solo. Have you ever played this, Anthony?
Never.
Okay, we gotta add that one in. Ethiopia's Shadow. That was Florence Price, Ethiopia's Shadow of America, and what an incredible piece of music. She won many awards, and she wrote to Kusevitsky about having her music performed. And I don't know if you know, but Kusevitsky basically said, you know, music by women composers is frivolity, is considered frivolity and not taken seriously. But he was in a really difficult position because he wanted very much to perform her music. But he said he also had foreign blood in him, and therefore it was a difficult position for him as a conductor to present her music, let alone, of course, the fact that she was African American. Now, there's no composer living that I admire as much as Richard Danielpour for his hundreds of works that have been recorded and such great music. It's wonderful to have Richard with us, and such an important piece that he wrote for Anthony. So welcome, Richard Danielpour from LA.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
I'm going to let the three of you have a conversation, and I'm just in the way here. So you share with us. Desiree is going to lead us through this piece, and you can share this great piece of music that you've written and how relevant it is. Thank you.
Richard, before we when we were all in the green room, the Zoom green room, we were just starting to talk about some of the reasons why kind of centering Black composers in this Black Lives Matter ideas. But you said before Black Lives Matter was a tagline. Can you just talk a little bit with us about why that's so important for you as a composer?
Well, in 2002 to 2005, I wrote an opera with Toni Morrison, the Nobel laureate, who passed away about a year ago. The title of the opera was Margaret Garner. And I believed the story of Margaret Garner, who was an African-American slave living on a plantation in northern Kentucky, who ran away with her children and husband in the dead of winter in 1856, and because of the Fugitive Slave Act was actually chased and retrieved by her owner, Archibald Gaines. But before she could do that, before she could go back, she actually slit the throat of her oldest child, and on the boat ride back tried to drown her youngest child, and the youngest child drowned and she survived. So her arguments before her court case were whether she should be tried for murder or for destruction of property, because if the court in her hearing was going to try her for murder, the court in the nation would have to admit that she and her children were human beings. This story moved me so deeply, and I realized that it was a story that we had to tell. I spoke to Toni about it. She had written a novel titled Beloved, which was based on the historical account of Margaret Garner. And so we entered into this knowing that we were giving voice to what was arguably the greatest unhealed wound in American history. And at the time, there were a lot of people who were wondering why I wanted to do this. And I kept saying, one day you'll realize why this is so necessary. You may not get it now, but eventually you will understand. And of course, Margaret Garner was played all over the country. There was a second production in 2007 at Lincoln Center. But around 2007, I had an idea with my dear friend, Maya Angelou, who in many ways was like my surrogate grandmother. Dr. Angelou and I were talking about writing an opera about the last year of Dr. King, who was always one of my great heroes. It ended up being too difficult to do because of the intellectual property rights. But at the time in 2007, I had a set of performances with the Atlanta Symphony, and she said, I'm going to call my friend, Reverend Andrew Young, so that you can meet with him when you're in Atlanta. And this is the end of May 2007. And I had lunch with Andy Young every day for 8 days in Atlanta. And in you
got Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Andy Young. How do we go from that to this great piece you commissioned for Anthony McGill? How do we go from that to this?
I'm about to tell you, if you'll let me, just one more second. So I had lunch with Andrew Young every day, and he told me stories about Dr. King every single day. And in that time, I thought, if I don't get to write an opera, I'm definitely going to write a piece that pays tribute to Dr. King. And when it became apparent that we weren't going to write the opera, I decided it came very clearly in one day that I wanted to write a clarinet concerto, which would take the form of a clarinetist being the equivalent of a Southern Baptist minister and the orchestra being a congregation, all of them together remembering the life of Dr. King, as if they were reliving his life, the last year in particular of his life. Right away, I knew that the only person who could perform this solo part was Anthony McGill. And I remember calling him one day and I said to him, "You're the only guy who can do this. I won't write this if you don't do this."
And so Anthony, you got that call, and how did that make you feel? What did that mean for you as the amazing African-American and amazing soloist you are? Like, what did that mean for you when you got that call?
Well, when I was a student and I would, see Richard Danielpour around, and we met, I think we got to know each other closer at Marlboro, perhaps.
Yes.
So we had talked about this stuff, but a lot of people in the world, they talk about stuff and it doesn't actually come into reality. So they say, it would be nice to do something together. And you say yes, and you smile, and you say yes, and you smile. But then when you have this kind of opportunity to actually do something, and then when he talks to me, and then we go to lunch and he talks to me about this piece, I remember I was getting really emotional about it, because Richard can go on and tell stories like nobody else. So when he's telling stories, and he's telling stories about all these people that he just mentioned, and we have like an hour long lunch, and actually the other day we spoke for a long time too on the phone, and he just shares that energy, that this whole concept that you bring up of centering Blackness is very important artistically, right? And so, as Richard likes to talk about in his own career, that as a creator, that he has been centering that because of his own belief in the necessity of it, because, as he refers to it, this great unhealed wound. And so the emotion that, and I'll just talk, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but the emotion that when I play this piece as a performer of this beautiful music, as a Black person on that stage, and when you hear the piece in its entirety, if you can do that, I'm overwhelmed as a performer. So it is the greatest dream that I have to be able to play music like this by composers like Danielpour, because it is because I never ever get to express myself in such a manner on stage.
And so what did that mean for you, Richard, hearing it? Hearing him play it?
The thing about composers is that we have this sound that's inside our head, when we're writing, right? And then what happens is that when it's given to a performer, the sound that's in your head is outside of your head. It's like the moment in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy steps out of the house and all of a sudden the film goes from black and white to color, right? And so that's what the experience is like for me. But I must tell you also that one of the most powerful things that I ever, and and Dr. Angelo was very much aware that I was writing this for Anthony because she loved Dr. King, you know, and they knew each other. And he was assassinated on her birthday, by the way, on April 4th. And she said to me one day, she said, you know, most of the world defines itself by what they acquire and take from the world. But we as artists define ourselves by what we give to the world. Mm-hmm. And you know, to me, those were very powerful words. Composers give away everything they make, just as performers do. You know, the thing is, when Anthony takes a breath to play one of those passages in my concerto, that breath can never be recovered again. He has given that breath away forever. It's not retrievable. You follow what I'm saying? So there's something sacred about that breath to me. There is something sacred about that. And you know, I have to say that I mentioned these meetings with Andrew Young because I feel that those days prepared me for writing this piece, you know. And I remember the first day he saw me, he looked at me, and I was really upset because I'd through the Freedom of Information Act, I'd found out all these things about Dr. King's assassination, which were anything but what the official story was. Mm-hmm. Dr. King's assassination was the equivalent of a black op because he had become a threat to the economic infrastructure of the United States. And I found
can I just say it is just a privilege to just hear these stories and this wisdom. I wish we had like 90 minutes just to hear some of your amazing stories. But I think they want us to turn to the chat here and see if there are any questions from our audience. I wish we could just sit and talk for hours.
I do.
To look and see if the audience has any questions.
Thank you, and it's just so relevant to hear the story behind the music too. Did you know that in 1893 Dvorak made a radical prediction that he told the New York Times that the future of this country must be founded upon what are called Negro melodies, that this must be the foundation of any serious school of composition to be developed in the United States. So he was telling white composers that they must be bound to the people they enslaved and killed. And Gershwin, as we know, did that. Richard does that. A few other composers. But you know, we must change the future now and enable these pieces to breathe new life and opportunity. And the inspiration of Anthony McGill and Richard is just phenomenal. How we can share this and make a difference for the future. So I want to thank you both, and I'd love us to hear another snippet. Richard, can you tell us about this section of the piece that you have chosen?
Well, I believe you may be talking about the cadenza as it goes into the last movement. If it's the cadenza we're talking about, that is with clarinet and timpani. And the reason I used timpani was because on the night that Dr. King gave his final speech, the night before he was assassinated, there was a terrible thunderstorm that night. You can hear it in the tape, that mountaintop speech where he said, you know, I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that we as a people will get to the promised land. That was
Let's listen to it.
Yeah, let's listen.
Thank you. How was that to perform, Anthony?
Gosh. Every time that moment starts, when I'm performing it, that is the spot that I have to fight back the tears on the stage. And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally. Because at this stage of the work, you really start to feel what's going to happen. You start to feel that the end is near. And you start to think about the language that he uses. You start to think about what does the future hold, that maybe we have not gotten to the mountaintop yet, that we haven't gotten there, that we can see it though. We can feel it. We can feel that it's right to get there. And to think about how long ago that was in America, but that it feels like it wasn't so long ago when you think about everything that's going on in the world. And that's what I feel when I play that moment in the piece, is that there was, as we say, the prophetic words that were spoken by this great man, Martin Luther King, and these dreams and these hopes. And you hope that those words didn't fall on deaf ears, and that the tone of that piece, as you hear there, it sounds like there is something menacing at the end, right? And the crying out of the violin with the clarinet mixed in, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And
There's a place that composers have to go, which involves a kind of surrender. The moment you think you have it figured out, you're really finished. And like with every piece I've written that I can remember, I had to empty myself, like a clean slate. I've become an idiot all over again, not knowing nothing about how this is going to happen. And it is from that emptiness, from that surrender, that the possibility of something real can enter. But in surrendering and emptying yourself, you become very, very vulnerable, Yeah. So those very tender moments that we were just listening to, I was, when I, never when I write it am I emotional, but whenever I have to play everything back, when I end up playing it back to myself, that's when all of a sudden, if I know it's getting to me, I'm so much tougher than any music critic in the country on myself. If it's getting to me, then I know that it's going to get to somebody else.
We have a question from one of our friends watching. In fact, Greg Hughes asked Richard, did you audition for Juilliard in 1980?
I did indeed. And I remember the day. It was June 1st, 1980. And I had met Vincent Persichetti just about 5.5 months before that. And it was a very funny moment because I walked into this smoke-filled room, and there I saw Elliott Carter, Roger Sessions, David Diamond, Milton Babbitt, and then Vincent Persichetti perched himself at the piano, and I started laughing. And Elliott Carter took off his bifocals and said, "What's so funny?" And I said, "Well, I'm never going to see this again. I wish I had a camera." And that's how my audition began. And it was something I'll never forget. It was quite amazing.
Greg, you got it right. Well, I wish we could talk longer, but I know for Anthony, it is extremely late, and you've been up since the crack of dawn working with young musicians and just fulfilling that mission that you were put on this planet to do. I want to thank you all tremendously for giving your heart, your music, your talents, all of you for this conversation this evening, and say I'm sad to wrap it up, but I am excited because I know we are going to perform this piece with you one day, Anthony, and Richard was going to come up and join us for it. So let's just put this on pause and we'll get this conversation back with Desiree leading, all together in person as soon as we can. And meanwhile, be well, stay healthy, and we'll hear something of Richard's music very soon. Even if it's not From the Mountaintop just yet, we're hoping to perform something in a small fashion as soon as we can get together. Just to end this program, I wanted to remind everybody that next week we are doing our Encore series. This will be a YouTube premiere, and we basically have some really exciting performances from the past. A tabla concerto by Danielpour. We've also got Fire Mountain, written for Symphony Tacoma, and Symphony Tacoma Voices, and a new film has been created for that. So we're going to end with just a short promotion of next week's program for you. So stick around for the next 3 or 4 minutes and watch this. Replay this. It's going to be back on YouTube. You can share it with friends. And thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you soon.
This is a collaboration on multiple levels. We thank the Museum of Glass, the Mount Rainier's Parks Association, the Hilltop Glass artists, who've all partnered with Symphony Tacoma in creating this incredible work by Daniel Ott.
The naturalist John Moore called Mount Rainier the noblest of all the fire mountains, when comparing her to the many other majestic peaks, not only in Washington, but all along the Pacific coast. For me, first and foremost, Fire Mountain is a celebration of Mount Rainier's beauty, something near and dear to me having grown up in nearby Puyallup. My work, which uses not only the full orchestral resources of Symphony Tacoma, but also the choir Symphony Tacoma Voices, is meant to both evoke that beauty as well as warn against the dangers of the mountain's rapidly receding glaciers. Coupled with the new film, which juxtaposes images of nature with the act of making glass art, Fire Mountain will, I hope, create a powerful statement for all who experience it.
The footage comes from Mount Rainier as well as glassmakers to create an incredible fire and ice production. Symphony Tacoma seeks to have art respond to life and build relationships in our community. Art can serve as a catalyst for education, growth, and transformation in a region. Through a process of community collaboration, this partnership seeks to produce an inspiring experience, empowering participants and students to undertake an active role in protecting our region. We thank our sponsors, Boeing and the National Endowment for the Arts.